Ego is the enemy. When confidence stops you from growing. I've been thinking about ego lately. Not ego in the obvious sense, not someone walking around thinking they're better than everybody else. I'm talking about the quieter version of ego, the version that tells you, I already know. And honestly, I think that's one of the most dangerous places you can get to as a coach. Ryan Holiday talks about this throughout Ego is the Enemy. We usually think ego shows up after someone becomes successful, but ego can show up at every stage. When you're trying to become successful, when you finally achieve something, and even when things aren't going well. And the more I coach, the more I realize how relevant this is in our industry, because strength and conditioning is full of opinions. Everyone has their system. Everyone has their methodology, their favorite exercises, their certification, their way of programming. And eventually, it's really easy to start defending your way instead of asking whether your way is actually working. I've been guilty of this too. You learn something, you use it, it works, so you keep using it. And eventually, something that started as a tool becomes part of your identity. Now when someone questions the method, it feels like they're questioning you. That's where ego becomes dangerous, because a good coach should be able to say, I was wrong, or I don't know, or even, there's probably a better way to do this. Those aren't signs of weakness. I actually think they're signs that someone is becoming a better coach. Because the longer you coach, the more you realize how much you don't know. Early in my career, I think I wanted answers. What's the best exercise? What's the best program? What's the best way to develop speed? What's the perfect number of sets and reps? Now, I'm much more interested in questions. Who am I coaching? What are they trying to accomplish? What have they already done? What do they respond to? What's the environment? What are the constraints? Because the answer changes. And if my identity is attached to being the person who always has the answer, I'm eventually going to stop listening. That's not just a coaching problem. That's a leadership problem. One of the hardest things about leading people is realizing that having a title doesn't automatically make you right. Sometimes the newest person in the room sees something you don't. Sometimes an athlete gives you feedback that completely changes your program. Sometimes another coach challenges something you've been doing for years, and you have a choice. You can protect your ego, or you can get curious. And I think the same thing happens in training. People become attached to numbers, a certain squat, a certain press, a certain body weight movement, and eventually the number becomes a part of who they are. So instead of training to improve, they start training to prove something. They take jumps they're not ready for. They ignore pain. They turn every session into a test. They compare themselves to everybody around them. And now ego is determining the training instead of the purpose. That's backwards. Training should serve the goal. The goal shouldn't serve your ego. And I think there's another side of this that doesn't get talked about enough. Ego isn't always loud confidence. I'll say that again. Ego isn't always loud confidence. Sometimes ego is being afraid to look bad. Not asking a question because you might realize you don't know the answer. Not trying something because you might fail. Not posting because you're worried it won't get enough views. Not reaching out to someone because they might say no. That can be ego too, because you're protecting your image instead of pursuing growth. I've definitely caught myself doing that. You can spend so much time trying to make something perfect that you never actually put anything out. But if the purpose is to get better, then you have to be willing to be bad at something for a while. You have to ask stupid questions. You have to make mistakes. You have to change your mind. And sometimes you have to look back at something you believed in 5 years ago and think, I wouldn't do that anymore. That's growth. The goal isn't to prove that you've always been right. The goal is to keep becoming better. Become a better coach. Become a better leader. A better athlete. A better person. So one question I've been trying to ask myself more often is, am I doing this because it's actually the right thing to do or because I want to be right? Because those aren't always the same thing. And maybe that's one of the biggest lessons from Ego is the Enemy. Stay a student. Keep asking questions. Be willing to change your mind. Let the results matter more than the credit. And don't become so attached to who you are today that you prevent yourself from becoming better tomorrow. Because when ego starts driving the choice, purpose usually gets pushed aside. And purpose drives intent.